I saw where Albert Pujols was trending, and I'm like, well, what the hell is this all about? Did he retire or what?
Uh-huh.
And it was really nothing more than, a bunch of Cardinals fans, mostly Cardinals fans, going back and forth and arguing about whether the Cardinals should sign him as a DH. And I just thought, well, that's kind of fun. That's kind of random. It's just like out of the blue. But then I thought, in fairness, like, in other words, I thought it was fun and it's harmless. So I'm not making fun of anybody for getting into that conversation because, well, let's face it, we do that here. We know that there's going to be a season. We know there's going to be some roster moves. We all have ideas about they should do this, they should do that, So why not? I mean, that sort of keeps baseball talk going. And I thought, by and large, it was a pretty good conversation, pretty civil conversation. So maybe we'll revisit that a lot. Because it is interesting to kind of look at, his bat against left-handed pitching, and that's all it would be. And that would, long story short, and again, I'm getting redundant. We can revisit this later in the show. But long story short, if you're going to have Pujols as a right-handed DH against left-handed pitching, and by the way, there's not all that much left-handed pitching in terms of starters. That pretty much, blocks Juan Yepez. And some people would say, well, so what? I get that. I mean, one guy's one of the greatest players in the history of the game, even though he's older, and he can only do so much as far as platoon splits and all that. You can't play him against right-handed hitters at all. Right-handed pitchers, sorry, man. And they have high hopes for Yepez. I don't know that blocking him does anything for you, But I get it from an abstract way, which is, well, if you know that Albert Pujols can clobber left-handed pitchers and you're going to bring Gorman up and presumably, after maybe a transition, he will clobber right-handed pitchers, that's a pretty sweet DH combination. And frankly, I would say, yeah, it is. But where are the Cardinals going to put... See, I'm talking about it already.
Uh-huh.
I didn't really want to get all upset about the Blues. I'm sorry. I mean, we will, but I was trying to be a little talk about something cheerful.
We could talk about that later. We got time.
Yeah. It's just that how much of a value are the Cardinals going to put on? All right, look, we're developing these players for a reason. And we didn't do it just to kind of fool around and look at their statistics and bet each other, that this guy hit 25 home runs. No, it's not like a parlor game. These guys are going to be a big part of our team, and there's a couple of them that are really close to being ready. So, keep stashing them in AAA or whatever for a long time so you can bring back an older player, granted a franchise icon. How do you progress? Because the more at bats a guy like a Yepez gets, and if you believe he's going to be a really terrific major league hitter, and they do believe that, the sooner you get him going, the faster he gets to that place where you're like, wow, this guy's a great new addition to the lineup. I mean, you have to get a guy launched, and even if he hits $180 in his first month or something, the sooner you get that out of the way and the sooner the guy gets acclimated and confident, then that's when, if he is who you think he is, that's when it gets really special. But you have to start that clock, or obviously it's going to take you longer to get to that place where he's really special, if it in fact happens. So I tell you what the wild card is, and this is what I was thinking about because I thought it was a fun discussion. The wild card is this. I challenge everyone to think about this. I believe the Cardinals are going to have a hard time, at least early in the season or much of the season. As they did last year, there were a lot of empty seats, and some of it was COVID related, some of it was boredom, some of it was just change of lifestyle because people found out they didn't have to be at the ballpark. Life goes on. There's other things to do that can be fun and less expensive. But if the Cardinals fan support in terms of people buying tickets, if the fan support is soft this year, or they fear that it's going to be soft, because after all, because of this lockout, I mean, people are angry. And I know people are angry in St. Louis. And I know that this has had to damage or at least affect, not in a good way, the Cardinals group sales and advanced sales and all the people from, around the region, the South, who for years and years and years have driven to St. Louis to have a great weekend, kind of a little getaway, take in some Cardinals games, then drive back to, Tennessee or Arkansas or wherever. If that market has softened, and even if the market has softened in terms of the fans here in St. Louis, you think Albert Pujols might fill some seats? You think?
Oh, yeah.
I think so. So maybe it would be, hypothetically, maybe it would be that kind of decision. Well, what's best for our future? Getting a young, strong hitter, right-handed hitter that we really love, getting him going, because the sooner we get him going, the sooner he can get us going. Is that the priority, or is it, well, we got to get as many people in here and create some excitement as we can? That's an interesting question, I think.
I think it's definitely one that's got to be explored, right? If you're owning the team.
Yeah, I mean, you give it some thought. They tried to sign him. They were interested in him last year, but they came to the conclusion that, as you remember, there just wasn't. They wouldn't have been able to get enough at bats for him, because you're not going to tell Paul Goldschmidt to take off twice a week or whatever, not play first base, and he was phenomenal, especially final 3 months of the season, just phenomenal. But you have the DH, so it does create some opportunities. It depends on how you want to do it. But if you're talking about a guy who can clobber left-handed pitching, last season, Albert Pujols hit .294 with a .603 slugging percentage, .939 OPS against left-handed pitching. You know what his OPS was against right-handed pitching?
I do not.
500. That's not good.
No, it's not.
And I'm being polite.
Yes.
I am being polite. So anyway, I throw that out just to have something different, something fun, something for a Friday where you're just like, what the heck? Let's talk about something that's like kind of different, like you wouldn't expect to hear on a Friday during a lockout 2 days before the Super Bowl. So.
Texter says, just curious, guys, can Albert Pujols wear two caps as both the hitting coach and the DH versus left-handed pitching?
I don't know. It's a good question. I guess he can, because I know Jeff Albert's. What is he, Jim? Is he like the worst coach ever?
Yes,
in the history
he's
of mankind?
Brutal.
Yeah, that's right. You know what interests me? You know what I find?
I think he's right behind Vern Rapp.
Oh, there you go. You know what I find interesting about that is that, like, there's a couple things I find it very interesting, and I'm just having fun here.
Mm-hmm.
It's very intriguing to me the way, like, if you look at the Cardinals, their hitting performance at Busch Stadium, right, and then you compare it to the hitting performance on the road, which was phenomenal. But as we know, we've talked about, Busch Stadium actually does really kill offense, and that's good for their pitchers, not so good for their hitters, especially right-handed pitchers. So that's really interesting to me, how Jeff Albert is like just a really bad hitting coach when the team's at home. And then when they go on the road, he's a hitting coach that's got like one of the top 2 or 3 offenses in terms of road baseball in the major leagues. I just find that interesting. I don't know what it is. Like, so if he flies out of St. Louis, does he get smarter when they land somewhere else? I don't know. Does he become a better teacher? And then the other thing, too, like the first 3 months when they didn't have their outfield in place, which they were building the team around other than the 2 guys at the infield corners, it's really interesting. Like, he was a really lousy hitting coach when he didn't, they didn't have their team in place, right? But when they got their team in place, they had a top 5 offense in the major leagues over the final 3 months. That's just really fun, interesting to me that how smart, how much smarter he became. When O'Neill and Bader and Carlson were in there all the time, and Sosa, Sosa was in there a lot more than DeYoung, and Sosa had a good year offensively. That's the damnedest thing. The way Jeff Albert went from being really dumb, and then all of a sudden he was smart, and they've got a top 5 offense for the final 3 months of the season. I find that stuff really fascinating, how that happens.
He never got any credit. His name was not mentioned during that 17-game winning streak at all. You're right about
I give Katie Wu of the Athletic some credit because she talked to Cardinals hitters later in the season and got some pretty good input from them about how they realized they had to make more of an effort to sort of dig into some of the stuff that he was presenting to them because they thought this stuff's actually, we can see that it's working. And so, you had a guy like Nolan Arenado and there were others who, basically said that, that was one of the reasons that they were able to turn things around because they started to, buy in more at least, buy into it more, Jeff Albert's, the stuff that he had been preaching. But Jeff Albert is like such a damaged guy because he's such an, easy guy to blame for everything. Because, you can't, unless it's the guy that we pick on, there's always the one guy, you and I talk about this all the time. There's always one Cardinal that it doesn't matter what he does. People are going to hate on him. They're going to be obsessed with him. They're going to fixate on him. So, Matt Carpenter was that guy for a couple years. This year, clearly the front runner for that role is Paul DeYoung. But Jeff Albert is, Jeff Albert may be the biggest boogeyman of them all. To the point where even when the offense functions at a very high level, people will tell you that he's ruining everything. And it's like, well, are you watching the games or
yeah,
so. But it's funny because they don't hit at Busch Stadium, and I don't believe that that's his fault. But of course, silly me, of course it's his fault. And they go on the road and they're kind of a powerhouse. He doesn't get any credit during those times. When they get their players, the lineup they wanted to have, in place, it finally is snapped into place, and they're a really, really good offense. Well, he still gets ripped. So I'm a believer in this kind of thing. I don't care if his name's Jeff Albert or Charlie Lau or whomever. If you're gonna when a team ain't hitting. And you're going to do the thing you always do. You can't criticize the players except for the one that you designate as the one that we're all going to hate on. Other than that guy, one of those guys a year, you can't criticize the players. So you got to blame everything on the hitting coach, no matter what his name is. But it's interesting. But when the team's tearing it up and scoring a lot of runs, hitting for power, average, runners in scoring position, all that. It's really funny. It's like you don't hear a peep about, maybe Albert's got some things going. Maybe he's helping them out now. You never hear a peep. You don't hear a sentence.
You're exactly right about that.
I just find that really funny, So, and I'm sitting here talking about this with a smile on my face. I'm in a good mood on this Friday, but I just wanted to give that sort of opened the door for me to just remind people of the double standards we have. And that, by the way, that's true of every fan base. It ain't limited to St. Louis.
Oh, definitely not. No doubt. On the text line, Bernie, if I had a chance to see Albert, Waino, and Yachty one more time, I would go down multiple times to watch them play for one last rag.
See, I got to think a lot of people feel the same way, and I respect that opinion, and I ain't going to sit here and lie. It would certainly... look, I'm going to watch just about every game anyway,
mm-hmm.
but it certainly would raise my curiosity and interest and enthusiasm because it would be fun just to know you can look forward to that. I mean, the last roundup, those three guys, are you kidding me? That's pretty strong stuff right there. And especially if Albert is someone, not Jeff, by the way, if Albert Pujols is someone who can still just mash left-handed pitching because he would actually play a role if you're willing to do that at the cost of, instantly turning to a young right-handed bat to handle that platoon type of role at DH. But I keep reading, and by the way, this isn't no shot at all at the people writing it, whether it be Katie Wu or whether it be Derek Gould. But, whenever people, the last few pieces I've seen about the DH potentially for the Cardinals, there's a lot of Paul DeJong talk. And I'm like, maybe I'll wait till we get to that point. But if he's not hitting and yet they're going to cram him into the DH slot more than just the occasional time, when it's fairly busy and he's going to be in there sometimes, then I start to get real dramatic, and then I start to question their commitment to winning, because look. You would have, again, we're talking about a right-handed hitter against a left-handed pitching in the DH slot. You would have a really promising young power hitter who also gets on base. He's not like a big, massive strikeout guy who doesn't walk. You would be giving those at-bats to a mediocre Paul DeJong instead of a Yepez. You would be giving them to DeJong instead of, say, for example, bringing Pujols back for a last hurrah because he can really crush left-handed pitching. You would be missing out on some other opportunities to add people who could be part of that DH committee on the right side. So I'm not sure why. He's either the shortstop or he's not, and if he's not hitting. At least he plays shortstop at a high level, and I always praise DeJong for his defense. And one of the things that kind of ticks me off is that because so many people hate him, they won't even acknowledge that he's an above-average fielder, and he is. He's been one of the best shortstops in baseball in terms of defensive runs saved for quite a while. So he has value because, not all shortstops are big-time hitters. But what would be the point of using him at DH if he's not much of a hitter? When at that point you strip away his value, and his value is excellent defense. So I would be hard pressed to understand the logic. And again, I'm talking about something that's more than the occasional appearance as a DH. I wouldn't understand what the point is to all that.
Yep. More on our text line here. The follow-up text. I was not a slam at Jeff Albert. I was curious if you can actually have a hitting coach and be a DH at the same time. That was actually wondering if that was possible.
I tell you what, man. No, I got you. And, forgive me. I was just having fun.
I was too. I was the same way.
I apologize, though. I wasn't, trying to be a jerk. I just was having – you just gave me a chance to get something off my chest. I've been waiting to get off my chest for a while, and I'd never had a spot for it. So, but no, thank you. Albert Pujols, I watched a lot of Dodgers games once they got him because I thought it was fascinating. And all he did was talk to players. All he did was, especially some of their younger hitters who were struggling. You see Albert Pujols by the cage with those guys all the time. He's going to be a hell of a coach, whether it be for the Cardinals or someone else. I mean, he absolutely will. He's one of the smartest players I've ever seen. What about you? I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah, absolutely. He knows. He is like, he and Yachty, it's amazing they came together at the same time because they're so smart in terms of, knowing the game and having that baseball presence that I can't imagine any team recently having two smarter guys on the same team at the same time with all that Hall of Fame type talent. It's pretty. We were very fortunate. Let's say that.
So since I mentioned, it's really funny how this show works sometimes, especially on a Friday. I do write down a plan. I do write things like, okay, here are topics I want to hit today. I usually have, a file, not a paper file, but a online file about these things, so I have notes to refer to and all that. But then today, I'm like, you know what, I just kind of randomly bring up something that I thought was, kind of fun last night to see this Pujols discussion, and I'm like, now here we are talking about it, and the thing of it is like, why not?
Yes.
Why not? I mean, we're going to get to the Blues, but that's nasty. And
yeah, we're going to stay positive for most of the show today. Let's hope.
Man, you can always talk ball in St. Louis. Always. You don't really need you don't need a justifiable reason or an event or anything else. You can talk ball. Anyway, what was I going to do here? Katie Wu. She participated in this thing, The Athletic, because The Athletic always has these fun type things, right? And they, in addition to the deep dives and all the other things they do, they had a great story on Joe Burrow this week, by the way. I mean, the two different writers worked on it, and they traveled all over the place, like Louisiana, Ohio, wherever else he's been, Ohio State, LSU campus, coaches, players, apartment mates, family. It was a great story. It told you everything you really want to know about Burrow and his makeup and why he is the way he is. It's great. So The Athletic will give you that stuff. And then they'll give you fun stuff like this. Well, that was fun, but you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. They'll give you fun stuff. Headline today, designated hitter candidates for every National League team. And I don't think Katie Wu would mind me just reading what she had to say because I'm promoting her work and I am a subscriber. Aren't I allowed to, as a subscriber, to say, hey, in my Athletic subscription, I saw this and I wanted to share it with all you good people.
I'm a subscriber too. So
no, they're very good to me. They don't really mind. They, because I worked for them and enjoyed it very much and have a lot of friends there. But anyway, this is what she wrote. Quote, the Cardinals aren't likely to name an official designated hitter, but unlike years prior, they might have the roster flexibility and young talent to utilize matchups in platoons. I agree. Juan Yepez, a breakout prospect who posted a career year in the minors last season, could see the opportunity, as could Lars Nootbaar, who filled the role as a serviceable fourth outfielder last season. The most likely scenario, Katie Wu wrote, is a rotation of characters. Paul DeJong could slot in while Edmundo Sosa plays shortstop. A start for Nootbaar in the outfield would grant Tyler O'Neill or Dylan Carlson a break from playing defense while keeping their bats in the lineup. And though less likely to be as frequent, Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt could also be utilized as potential options. She continued and ended with this paragraph, quote, when top prospect Nolan Gorman, largely regarded as one of the top hitters in all of the minor leagues, is ready, he'll naturally profile at DH, but he'll also play around the infield as he adjusts to the major league level, leaving the DH by committee approach the most logical options to start the year. I wouldn't disagree with anything she says there. I just think they could streamline it. If they wanted to. At any time, they would have a chance to streamline it and turn that in pretty much a straight platoon,
Yeah.
And it just depends what the front office wants. It depends what how Ali Marmol sees it. It depends whether I hate to say this, but until we know better, we got to learn about him. It depends on whether Ali Marmol follows orders from the front office about who to play. I'm not taking a shot at him. I'm just saying they ran off. They sacked the previous manager because there was an obviously disagreement about philosophy and maybe how personnel was used and all that. So you got a rookie manager. I think is really smart, but he is a rookie manager, and the front office picked him. So that's one of the many questions I think face the Cardinals going into this year. We all know the front offices now have a lot of influence over managers, and for people to think it only happens in St. Louis or something is stupid. It probably is not as big of an issue here as it is in some other places. But the fact that they would say, this is who we think you should use at DH, and we feel strongly about it, that's something that's going on all across baseball, even with a guy like Dave Roberts. Even with a guy like Kevin Cash has been a manager of the year. Even we could name all kinds of managers. This is not the only place where that type of thing would happen. And we'll never hear the extent of it. I'm curious about this because this does tie into the DH. We'll never hear the extent of what the front office role will be in terms of setting a lineup. Is it going to be orders or is it going to be suggestion? You know what I mean, Jim?
Yeah, no,
I don't know.
A lot of truth in that. I got a couple more on the text line here. One says, they won't be starting anybody's clock if they bring Albert in.
That's what, absolutely, And as much as I'm excited about Juan Yepez, how many people going to be buying tickets? Hey, you know what? I want to see this Juan Yepez. Let me buy some season tickets. I don't think it's going to work that way at first.
No, I don't. I'm in agreement with you there.
You realize how they can market that, like you said, Yadi Molina, Adam Wainwright, and Albert Pujols together.
We might have 3 bobblehead nights with those 3 all on the bobblehead.
One last ride,
right?
Can you imagine? Can you imagine the marketing for that stuff?
Oh, it'll be huge
if they did it. Jim Bowden, by the way, also at The Athletic, said in a column, the first move each National League team should make after the lockout. St. Louis Cardinals, Jim Bowden says, give Kyle Schwarber a 3-year deal worth $54 million. Okay, Jim.
Yeah, wow. He's a nice hitter, and everybody is trying like heck to find him a place like he is going to be the true difference maker in the lineup. I think he'd be a nice player. I don't think he's – I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on this, Barry. I just don't see him as being the guy who absolutely pushes you over the top to be the pennant winner or the division winner nowadays, as we call it.
Well,
I don't know.
They've been really weak against right-handed pitching, and he kills right-handed pitching. But, again, at what cost? I've tried to explain it this way. If the Cardinals, which I don't think is the case at all, but if the Cardinals want to bring in Kyle Schwarber, I'd be very happy. I think that he would be what they're looking for as far as a counter to right-handed pitching that tends to overpower a lot of their guys. I mean, his career numbers are outstanding against right-handed pitchers. If they want to do it, you ain't going to hear any complaints from me. I'd say this is pretty cool because he's an exciting player. He's colorful, Midwestern guy, all that stuff, and fills a role that they need to have, or they need filled in order to do much better in one of their weakest areas. But again, it comes down to cost, and it comes down to what's their priority? Is it going to be? They don't want to get tangled up, maybe in a 3-year deal, even for him, even though he has appeal, when they believe they have young guys that are ready to take over. So that really comes down to the organizational philosophy. And I'm doubtful that that's the direction they'd go in. That's all.
Yeah, I'm there with you on that. We're on the text line. Bernie, Mo will never let another big contract sit on the bench. How many players have been held back because of these kinds of mistakes? Poor Ali Marmol.
That's a good point. That is. I hope they've learned their lesson. I'm pretty sure they have. Time will tell, right?
Yeah. You're right. That is one of the curious watches for me whenever we get to games, just to watch how Ali Marmol does his business, what his philosophy is, and then again, part of that game, at least for me, Bernie, and I'm sure it will be for you. I mean, we'll do it on the show. Is okay. How much of this is Ali making the decision, and how much is it he's being told this is what you have to do?
Right. And a balance is fine, because if they're all on the same page, that's what you want, actually. And I think Marmol's got his own ideas, and I think Marmol's much more advanced than Schilt. Schilt was more old school than I thought he'd be, because I think Schilt definitely. I mean, some of his media posse people have exaggerated the extent of which Mike Schilt pushed analytics, but he did push him a lot more than Mike Matheny. But there's still my understanding is there's still a lot of things that they could do that would even maximize the value of that more, and it's nothing really crazy either. If you got Paul Goldschmidt and you got Nolan Arenado, and this is something I've harped about a lot, so I apologize to our listeners who get tired of me talking about it, but when you have guys who can hit, and then you add O'Neill to it, you have guys who can hit 2, 3, 4 hole, for example, 5 hole as well if you fill that properly. I mean, you have a lot of firepower lined up. You don't give the most at-bats on the team to a guy that does not get on base at a high rate. And I'm talking about Tommy Edman. You just don't. You just don't do it. Mm-hmm. It makes no sense. I think, this is my theory, and I've got information, I think that was maybe one of the rubs. I think it was maybe one of the problems that perhaps the front office had with the manager. because, boy, he loved him some Tommy Edman. Oh, baby, did he love him some Tommy Edman.
He definitely did.
And it didn't matter how low Tommy would sink in terms of in baseball, in terms of his leadoff on base percentage, especially against right-handed pitchers. It didn't matter. I mean, he could have had a 205 on base percentage. Schulte be writing him in. You just don't do that. It just makes no sense to do that. So for example, I like something Derek Gould wrote the other day when he was in his chat, when he was asked about leadoff. He thinks it's going to be revolving leadoff hitters, and I think that's really smart. So if that's something Marmol's on board with, and he thinks he sat there and watched Edman, someone who cannot get on base regularly or not, especially someone at the top of the lineup. You need the guy to get on base a lot. Marmol's sitting there. He's not in charge. I'm sure he made his recommendation. But as we've as we've learned, Schult's pretty stubborn. He was much more stubborn than I anticipated. The idea of depending on who the starting pitcher is and what the numbers are like and whether he walks people or whether you can tire him out and run up his pitch count and then really, sort of get him out of the game early, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, man, you don't have to commit to one leadoff hitter. This ain't 1939, Mm-hmm. This ain't 1964. You don't have to commit to one guy. What's the point of that? If you can move them around based on matchup. So if that's something, I'm using a hypothetical. If that's something that the front office really strongly believes in, right? And they do have the flexibility to do it with some of the players they have. If that's something they really believe in and they push for that, I'm on their side. That idea seems to really bother a lot of fans. I don't know whether it's older fans or what. That kind of thing doesn't bother me. That's something I go, thank you.
Yeah.
Because what y'all want to see? When I say y'all, I don't mean that literally. So y'all want to see bad lineup construction because the manager's going to be saying, hell no. When the front office presents him with piles of numbers that just shows you, hey, man, you can maximize your offense this way. Why would I support someone who's being intentionally stupid? I don't see any kind of benefit in that, right?
No.
So if the smart people are sitting upstairs, and as long as they're proposing smart ideas that work, well, why the heck wouldn't everybody be on their side? Whitey Herzog ain't the manager anymore, It's a different time, man.
It's so different. Another one from the text line here. Bernie, Edman at leadoff was my biggest gripe with Schilt.
Yep.
It was so Matheny-esque.
It was. It was. And I always feel like I have to also add that I like him as a player. I mean, he does a lot for you. It isn't that I'm saying, well, they got to get a new second baseman, get him out of here. Not at all. I'm just saying he shouldn't be batting leadoff. And I also had the numbers, which I gave on the show a couple, 3-4 weeks ago. Interestingly, when Tommy Edman has batted anywhere else in the lineup, he's been a much better hitter. I don't know whether he feels like the pressure of well, I got to get on base, got to do this. But he doesn't really work counts. He just kind of goes up there slashing, And that slashing comes in handy if he's hitting somewhere else because he hits a lot of doubles. He runs the bases well. He's got a lot of qualities. It's just that I don't want to see a 310 on base percentage at the top of the lineup and getting 600 plus plate appearances. That just kind of it kind of undermines what you're trying to do.
One more. This one, different look on Pujols on this one, Bernie. It says, Bernie, I loved Pujols when he was here as a Cardinal, but he's too one-dimensional. I wouldn't bring him back. Would rather spend it on relief.
Well, thank you. I appreciate all these comments. Now, I don't know what he would be looking for. I mean, I don't think he's going to, if he thinks somebody's going to give him $7 million, $10 million or whatever. Cardinals are, I don't think any team would do that. But he is one-dimensional, but that's the whole point of using him in a specific slot. DH against left-handed pitching, and then in that case, him being one-dimensional is not real bad. Granted, he's not going to be fast as a runner, but he's a really smart runner, you know.
He's always been that, yeah.
No doubt. So I think it limits his liability. I understand what our texter said there, but I'm just saying that's the DH kind of takes care of most of that problem. That's all. My argument against it, if I wanted to argue against it, as someone who wants to be entertained, it would be a lot of fun. But it would just be the idea that I know this organization is really excited about Yepez. They're really excited. And it's like they believe he's ready, or they wouldn't have put him on the playoff roster
That's
last
true,
year.
yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, what's it going to be? If you're in love with this dude, cool. We all want to see a young hitter with power who takes walks and all that stuff. Well, you know, okay then, it's his time. Let's go, right? That'd be my counter argument, because he's going to have to play DH. There's no room at the end in the field. I mean, first of all, nobody knows like exactly where he would wind up in the field. They've tried to move him around. He could be, you know, corner infielder, corner outfielder, but he's going to be very limited defensively.
Yeah, he is DH, and that's pretty much it. You're right about that. What was it? You were giving out the numbers on him, and I said, that's the big shooter, right? And you go, no, that's Juan Yepez. So,
I think he is a shooter, but he's not Luke and Baker like big shooter. But no, and the thing about him, Yepez, and look, this doesn't mean it'll translate to the major leagues, but Yepez is just pounded right-handed pitching at AAA. Just pounded him. I mean, and you know, he's a right-handed hitter. I mean, that was a good sign too, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, we'll take a break. Yeah, I'm just going to go 2 hours straight without taking a break. Why not?
We have gone quite a ways. You're right.
Well, but this was fun to talk about this. Unexpected Friday, you got to keep them loose anyway.
Oh yeah,
it's got to keep Fridays loose.